Okay, hello. That's always a bit of a weird moment when we're waiting for everyone to come in from the waiting room. I'm Mandy Charman. I'm the manager of the Outcome Practice and Evidence Network, and I'm lucky enough to be your host for this session today. Firstly, we will acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we reach on today. We'd like to acknowledge elders past. For me, that's the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present and future, along with any Aboriginal people in our group. Thank you so much for making time to attend this session. It's a very busy time of year for everyone. We totally get that. We're really expecting this to be a very special session, and it's our last for the year, our last open forum for the year. So it's great to go out from this year with a bang. So I'm really looking forward to hearing our presenters. A little bit of housekeeping. This session is 3 presentations, which will be 20 minutes each, followed by five-ish minutes of question and answers. If you'd like to put your questions in the chat as you are listening to the presentation, I'll then pose them to our speakers during this period. Of course, there's always opportunity at that point to add more questions and so forth. So that's usually a very dynamic point. At that point, our presenters will stop sharing their slides, and it would be really lovely if a few people were really happy to put their cameras on, because it's much nicer for presenters to see people while they're talking about their work and get a sense of how many people are in the room at that moment. So if you can do that, okay, if you don't feel comfortable, but if you can, that would be great. Please make sure you're muted, and it's up to you, of course, whether you have your camera on during the presentation or not. We probably will, because it's nice for the presenters, particularly those that are solo, to have someone to talk to. It's already helpful to have, if you can put your correct name and even your place or the lands that you are on in your title sort of block. That always helps too with creating a sort of dynamic environment. If you have any tech issues, often if you leave the room and come back, that sorts it out. Or Sarah Ryan, you can see her on the top of the screen there, is here, and she's our tech support. So she'd be the first one to reach out via private chat if you start having issues. So we'll try and sort them out that way. Okay, one other thing, we can't forget this, the session is being recorded. So just be aware of that, so that if there's something you're not comfortable with, you might just want to not have your camera on. All good. All right, now on to the session. Today's session, as I said, is our final for 2022. This is our 8th open forum for the year, and we're already planning another program next year that builds on the success of this year. Our focus today is on innovations in out-of-home care. We'll hear from 3 different programs, all focused in different ways on improving the lives and outcomes of children and young people in out-of-home care. Those who are experiencing this care system for the first time, or have been in and living in residential care for some time, or those program building the understanding of the allied support services through sharing their lived experience of out-of-home care. So a really dynamic mix of topics in such, and we would all acknowledge, such an important and crucial area to get right and better and improve. So this is sort of the first of what will be a number of a focus for next year's programs too, because it is such an important topic. So our first presentation is titled The Care Hub, an Innovative Model of Collaborative Practice. Our speakers are Michael Oerlemans, Regional Director, North Central Region Anglicare, which is the largest region within Anglicare's Victoria stable of programs, 300 staff, which is a lot. Michael has begun his career as a researcher in the fields of language and psychology, and has since spent time working in health, government, and most recently, Anglicare. He is also currently the chair of the Inglewood and District Health Services and the servant of one of Anglicare Victoria's therapy dogs, Lacey. I hope he has a photo of Lacey in his presentation. Joe Farelly, Program Manager of Anglicare. Joe has been with Anglicare for 13 years, primarily in the out-of-home care area, but most recently at the Orange Door. Prior to that, she spent 10 years in child protection. This experience informed her decision to be part of the significant pilot that is the Care Hub. The opportunity to be part of an innovative program that supports children who are first-time entries into care to be reunified or stabilised was a significant factor in her involvement in such an exciting pilot program. Welcome, Joe and Michael. Would you like to switch your slides on, please?
Hi, everyone. I haven't got a photo of Lacey handy. That would probably be too much. And she's having the day off today, so she's actually at home, but she chooses not to spend it with me. Look, thanks for having us here today. We're here to talk about Care Hub, which is a pilot program running over the next 3 years around placement and around reunification. Joe Farelly is the program manager, and Joe will be doing most of the talking, and I will assist in the background by driving the presentation. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Mandy. Just to start with as well, so Michael and I are on the lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung today in the lovely Bendigo region. So it's really lovely to be here with you all, and I'm really excited to share the Care Hub with you all and some of the early insights into the program thus far. And again, real privilege to be a part of this program and bring it to life as the first across the state. So what is the Care Hub? So the Care Hub is a pilot program funded by the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. Initially, we commenced service offering in October 2021 with a time frame of around 9 months initially, but it soon became apparent with such a huge program to roll out that an extension was required. So we've been lucky enough to have the extension through until July 2024. We have 25 staff across the Care Hub through multiple agencies as a consortium arrangement. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. The intention of the Care Hub, so it's a trial program to explore early multidiscipline intervention and rapid reunification for children who are first-time entries into care. We do have a re-entry component as well, but really targeted at those children who haven't had and families who haven't had a great deal of involvement with the department to support that rapid reunification or stabilising and permanency planning. So it might be that we're supporting and stabilising placements given reunification may not be appropriate at this given time. And where possible, our aim is to ensure children and young people remain with family and really targeted at hearing the client voice to inform case planning. So it's a really intensive service offering, and children and young people are part of the care teams within the Care Hub as well to really ensure that we're hearing their voice and their voice is informing case planning as well. So we are part of a consortium arrangement. So we are one of 7 agencies that form the Care Hub. So Anglicare are the lead agency within the Care Hub and have around 13 staff. And then we have the Salvation Army who provide an adult AOD worker. We have YSAS, so our Youth Substance Assistance Support agency, who provide a youth AOD worker. Then we have our 2 ACCOs. So we have BDAC and NERNDA, so the Bendigo District Aboriginal Cooperative here in Bendigo. And we have NERNDA, who are our ACCO in the Echuca area. And then we have Berry Street, who provide a therapeutic specialist trauma-informed practitioner, and then Bendigo Community Health, who provide a mental health clinician and a family services practitioner. So you'll see around the main circle, they're the different role offerings within the Care Hub. And as I mentioned before, Anglicare have 13 positions, and within those we have family services practitioners, so to really do that targeted work around reunification with parents. We have key practitioners who really guide and lead that care plan for children and young people who are referred into the Care Hub. We have community workers, and their primary role is to engage young people and support connection with community and to really support contact between children with their parents and with siblings as well. BDAC, as I mentioned before, they also have a family services practitioner, a community worker, plus a really critical role with a cultural advice and support worker. So really bringing to life how we're supporting families from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds, and really considering and working with our ACCOs around how we're making sure we're doing this well and doing this critical work to ensure that families are supported within culture. And then we have within Anglicare as well 2 really critical roles with our therapeutic specialists. So we have a child therapeutic specialist, and then we have a family therapeutic specialist. So we've been really fortunate to see those roles bring to life that critical work with families and with children around therapeutic engagement within the early days of the Care Hub referral. So this is where the magic happens. We've got some really exciting roles that work together intensively across the different disciplines within the Care Hub to really do that targeted work to support reunification or placement stability. So a really exciting offering that we're finding is a really good complement for our families that are referred in. The model of care for Care Hub, so as I spoke about, we are for children and young people who are first time entries into care, or there is a re-entry component. So families that may have had a previous child protection involvement and have been re-referred into child protection. So we have what's called a placement component. So there are 12 placements available within the Care Hub. And of those 12 placements, that's a 6-week placement. So you can see that that's quite short and quite targeted in terms of that time frame in regards to research is really informed around, you know, the sooner we can support those children, whether it be home or onto more stable placements, the better. So a 6-week placement, and if we're able to support reunification, we can then have 12 weeks of outreach support to consolidate the work that we've achieved within the Care Hub within those timeframes. The placement options that we have. So we have short-term foster care of up to 2 children or young people placed with assessed and approved foster carers. Then we have a sibling placement of up to 6 children and young people through foster care as well. And that's really to ensure and try and avoid siblings being separated because of placement demand. We've been really fortunate to have a property that we can support a sibling group into, with carers moving in as well, to support that work within the Care Hub. And then we have a short-term residential care placement. So we have a house set aside for 4 young people who might need or do need placement within the residential care setting. Then we have our outreach component. So we have 12 weeks of outreach, and this outreach component is for those children and young people who are first-time entries into care and placed with kith or kin arrangements. So we can provide 12 weeks of outreach support. A lot of the service offering is similar to that within the placement component, where we are supporting reunification, and we can still flex those timeframes if we need to support consolidation of the work that we have achieved within the Care Hub. So it's to provide support to those early kith or kin arrangements, to provide support around reunification, and to provide that place-based community support to children and young people. So those referrals come into the Care Hub from child protection for those children who have been removed and subject to early orders such as interim accommodation orders or family reunification or preservation orders as well. So in terms of outreach, so again, it's that targeted reunification support and activity, and really targeted and specialist support to intervene into those reasons as to why children and young people have been removed from care. And that can be around, you saw the service offering before that we can provide. So those presentations where parents may have challenges around drug and alcohol misuse, or mental health presentation, or challenges around parenting, that we can really support with that family services practitioner or the mental health clinicians and therapeutic specialists. Engagement for the young people with education, employment, recreation. So really targeted at what are the interests of those children and young people, and how can we support connection for them within their community, and also to family as well. And then continuing support and therapeutic intervention for family or carers. So it may be that we're providing that therapeutic support to both the parents and also the carers around supporting that placement while they're within the Care Hub. I think we've been really fortunate, as you would be aware, the mental health space is really stretched at the moment, and we've been able to provide some really targeted and meaningful intervention for family around that therapeutic space with our mental health clinician and our therapeutic specialists as well. So jumping in and doing family therapy with young people and parents, those opportunities to really consider the reasons why children are out of parental care and how we can support. And most critically, as critically, that supporting those kinship arrangements as well for children and young people. So in terms of still in that what is Care Hub? No, okay. In terms of some of that evidence informed.
Sorry, Joe.
That's okay. Just what is Care Hub in terms of, yeah, we can jump into implementation. That's fine, and I can talk a little bit about how we're working. So so with regards to implementation, we can jump into evidence informed. Let's go back to that, Michael. In what is Care Hub? Yeah, so these are the ways of working. So I guess we, really critical in terms of how we're engaging our families. So the family services practitioners are working as family services practitioners work, applying the best interest case practice model and working with family action plans with families to really identify those goals that they're wanting to work on, but also the protective concerns, so we can really target our intervention with families as well. We are implementing the North Carolina Family Assessment Scale and reunification. So that's a measure of family functioning from the perspective of the key worker with families and really guides our intervention. And I guess the intensity and the timeframes of our intervention really lend well for the NICFAS model to really support what we're doing with families. We're also applying the common elements to good practice, which is an Anglicare developed module-based practice guide, which supports and enhances practice for practitioners, and it works on discrete techniques and strategies to support engagement and facilitate change in attitudes and behaviours for families. So that's 8 modules where it really considers strength-based practice, feedback, collaboration, how we're identifying priorities with families, and how we're goal setting. So some really practical ways of engaging with families across the common elements to good practice. Then we excitingly have Mockingbird. So that's also a new pilot program to Anglicare as well. And that's a model of creating a community of local carers working together to support each other and the children and young people that are placed in care. So that sits within our local out-of-home care system, with Care Hub having an intersection as well. So it's really about a peer approach to supporting children and young people in care. And then we've got our therapeutic crisis intervention, which our residential staff are trained in. So really, that model of care that can support those young people who are entering into our residential units. Michael, we might go to implementation now. So it's been a big 12 months, as you could imagine, rolling out a significant pilot such as the Care Hub. So really, we began operation at the same time as we all came together. So it was really about initially establishing those ways of working. What are the operational requirements, the processes and procedures, and really looking at those previous ways of working that we needed to consider within the Care Hub. So really intensively building and supporting families at the same time. Establishing those operational and strategic governance spaces to support the development of a pilot was really critical across our consortia partners. Developing internal and sector engagement for the Care Hub, working on those consortia relationships. Care Hub being a consortia arrangement, it was critical to develop those relationships across the 7 agencies, and that includes Child Protection as our referrer as well, to ensure that we had a space to, not only consider how we're working operationally, but the strategic space as well for the Care Hub. Evaluation, we've got care services who undertook an initial evaluation several months into the Care Hub, and we're about to enter into a deeper dived evaluation soon to really look at the work that we're doing in terms of a pilot program. Culture setting, we're a multi-agency arrangement. So we've got a space, and I look outside the where I'm sitting at the moment, and there is Take Two out there, there's YSAS out there, there's BDAC out there. So it was really important to set who are we as a care hub and as a team, and how we work together, and how we're doing the work that we're doing within the care hub. I think it became apparent pretty quickly in terms of that internal, engaged, interested and infected section there, Michael. The intersections with our internal programs was critical. We are essentially doing the work of family services, but we're also doing home-based care and kinship care support as well. So really connecting with our internal programs around ways of working, but also how we can support each other as well. We have care hub carers, so they're through our foster care program here with Anglicare as well. So working with our home-based care team and our caregiver services team around how to support and build our care hub carer pool as well. There are different requirements around care hub caring versus foster caring, and essentially it's the same program requirements or requirements as a carer, but the way of working is quite different. You've got an intensive service offering wrapping around you to support that children and to support the children and families in terms of reunification. And then we have our residential care home that sits within our residential care program. So really supporting and working with our residential care team to look and consider it doing something a little different as well. And then our youth services area. So a lot of our young people referred across can often have intersections with our youth area, whether that's the youth justice team, whether that's homelessness. So really became apparent, not only are we working and considering our consortial arrangements and relationships, but internally what that means as well. Our external engaged and interested and affected area is the department. So really nurturing that relationship and developing that relationship with the department, and that's with all levels here. You know, it's such a critical pilot program. We needed to have the child protection on board with us. So that's weekly, bi-weekly meetings with the department to really initially understand Care Hub, and then to set up those pathways for referral and now ways of working. So that's been really critical and really important, I guess, to the success that we've had to date within the Care Hub. The Orange Door, many of our families that come across to the Care Hub have had either family violence or previous family services involvement. So really critical to work with our colleagues at the Orange Door and across the Family Services Alliance as well. And then our care teams. So our care teams are very well attended, weekly care teams. That it's quite an involved space, and that often involves, or more often than not involves, colleagues from the education department and also our intersections with Victoria Police as well. So a very busy space internally and externally across the Care Hub. So the next one, Michael, would be around our outcomes. So just some early insights into the Care Hub to date. So we've had 79 children and young people referred into the Care Hub as at the end of November 2022. I think initially some of the anticipated numbers within the foster care space were higher than what has actually transpired, which if you are familiar with the Act, it does make sense that 57 of our referrals into the Care Hub of those 79 have been for children and young people in the outreach component. So that's children and young people who have been placed in kith or kin arrangements. So we've had 12 into foster care, and of those 12, 3 have returned to parent, 3 have remained in that foster care placement, and 4 have had a change in home-based care placements for various reasons. We've had 11 young people into residential care. 3 have moved on to kinship arrangements, 4 longer-term residential care arrangements, and 1 on to independent living. And as I said before, 57 to outreach, 31 have remained in that outreach component within the kinship arrangement, and 6 have been reunified to parent. So I think you can see there the majority have been around establishing and maintaining those placements within the kinship space, and that has been for various reasons, whether it's been parental engagement at the time of Care Hub and readiness, I guess, to consider the protective concerns, and it's also been around that need to stabilise, given the timeframes, to really ensure children are stable within those kinship arrangements. But some of that work has already been commenced, and we might be referring out to other services post Care Hub to continue the work that we've started. Some of the complexities that have been presented to the Care Hub replicate a lot of the child protection, I guess, early insights as well, around significant presentation of family violence, parental mental health, substance use by parents, but also some of those young people who have presented into residential care as well. Significant child protection and service engagement prior to referral within that re-entry component space, and that real need, we've had a number of infants referred across to date, so that real need for early parenting assessment and capacity so that we can really realise the full potential of the Care Hub intervention. What's working well? So the matrix model is working well. It's taking a real considered approach across the consortia, and that looks like supervision between consortia and Anglicare leadership. It's really open communication. It's the co-location arrangement. It's got its challenges, but I think there's a real commitment to ensure that this way of working is preserved and well received. The focus on reunification, the intensity in the early referrals across to Care Hub has meant that we can really focus on that work within the Care Hub, and we've got really strong care team commitment and approach. The collaboration across the consortia, the mix of disciplines, and that does really align with the complexities that we're seeing, the mix of disciplines really supporting the families that are referred across. We've got some early PASDA's involvement, so Parenting Assessment and Skills Development Service. We've been able to broker some PASDA's support into the Care Hub as well, which has been really beneficial. Client voice is really heard. The children and young people are present and involved in care teams. So we're really hearing the client voice and informing Care Hub intervention as well. Co-location, there's a strong focus on cultural lens with our ACO's involvement. And the flexibility with timeframes we're needing to apply somewhat within the Care Hub as well. And that wraparound support for families is really considered to be working well. Some of the challenges, exit planning, supporting particularly some of our young people out of residential care, but in saying that, that strong commitment to the care team and the case planning for children and young people referred to Care Hub has been really beneficial. The timeframes are challenged. I guess, again, the matrix model works well, but it is something that is challenged and continually needs nurturing. Child protection engagement as case planners and some of the processes within child protection, but in saying that, we've got a really committed and engaged child protection area, so we can brainstorm and workshop those things as they arise. And some of the placement pressures, we have, a residential care system and a home-based care or out-of-home care system that is challenged in terms of capacity, so that also is within the Care Hub as well, given we work within those spaces. So some of the early insights, as I've mentioned, the high provision of outreach supports rather than placement is quite significant. The matching across the 4-bed residential care is a challenge within the Care Hub. Timeframes, as I've mentioned, around the 6-week placement duration is not always adequate to stabilise a child or young person and support reunification. There is some desire for flexible eligibility around those children and young people who have been in potentially permanent care arrangements that have broken down, and how we could potentially support in that space. We've had such a strong commitment from the sector to support the model, and really couldn't have done it without that support. So that's been really recognised and celebrated. And as I mentioned before, those residential care targets. So that brings us to the end.
Very well timed, Joe.
Thank you.
Sorry, I lost it halfway through.
That's all right.
You have to be adaptable in these situations. What a great presentation, really thorough. Lots of the things I was immediately thinking about, you've actually answered. So that's really cool. We do still, as always, have some great questions. One, just an easier one to get started, just a clarification of the stakeholders and services involved, and particularly was child protection co-located at the care hub?
I think one of the interesting things when we first set this up with the department was the idea of being called a care hub. So it's actually a virtual hub, not necessarily a co-location. Having said that, Joe has found that over time, having the provision to hot desk for our partners and have them together has really enhanced what goes on for the care hub. So it is a semi co-located care hub now rather than a virtual care hub. So child protection aren't on site, but we have a sort of a space where everyone can come and interact if necessary.
And I think just to add to that, we have an agency performance and system support care hub senior project officer, and that person does come weekly and sit here for half a day. So that's been really critical as well to build relationships, and some of that reporting requirements has been really seamless with that relationship as well. And we go to the department and sit there every afternoon on a Thursday. So yes.
FaceTime is effectively what you're saying. That would create that whole immediacy of the interaction, because you're there having a coffee or a tea, and wandering around the floor.
Yes, exactly.
You can't really miss that, can you?
No.
We've had another question. What feedback have you received from the staff operating within this model? And you mentioned that you were using an implementation science approach, and I was, as a second part of that same question, interested in how that, your reflections on that and the staff's reflections on that.
The staff's reflections on what, sorry?
The implementation science approach that you mentioned that you were.
Yep. So the staff's feedback has been really positive. So we actually sat together in a workshop across all consortia most recently and reflected on what we've achieved thus far. And there's been some really good opportunities out of that. I think what they love most is, they're going out on joint visits, they're seeing families, because it could be quite overwhelming, the service offering through the care hub, but there's a real considered approach for each family that's referred across. So they see the benefit in the joined up work. They see the benefit in sitting alongside each other. The time frames are positive, but also challenge for staff as well. And that's for families too. Some families it works for, some families need a little bit longer. I think the implementation space, the feedback from staff, I guess we've approached this space as really open and really, we might not get things right, and that's okay. There are opportunities to learn as well, and that's across all those internal plus external stakeholders as well. So it's been a really considered, we're in it together, but we're in it together to really shift and flex at times, but also, really consider ways of working. So does that answer that, Mandy?
I think the implementation expectations have been pretty wild. So from the moment we were notified that we were getting the care hub, there was a kind of an expectation that we'd be up and running within 6 weeks. And the initial contract was for a 15-month pilot. So you can imagine us trying to actually recruit 23, 24 FTE based on 15 months and get them on board within 6 weeks. Now, fortunately, we were able to deploy a lot of staff, redeploy a lot of staff, and we made the commitment to put our staff ongoing. So take the risk with that kind of contract. So that actually helped. But it's been a pretty wild journey. It's been challenging as well for the Aboriginal community controlled organisations, because government asks a lot of them every time something comes out. They're wanting some resources in there, they're wanting some cultural advice, those kind of things. So in an environment where, as we all know, recruitment is challenging, it has been difficult for those agencies to recruit. So
that's a really good segue into the next question. Often consortium and partnerships and collaboration across services are can be quite challenging. And I suppose there were two questions. One, are you thinking or have you considered evaluating the the partnership and the enabling features of the partnership. And that's one. And two is, what would you see those enabling features are, given some of the systemic and other challenges related to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a sense, there's that day-to-day or week-by-week evaluation of the partnership. One of the interesting things about Care Hub is that the amount of attention that Jo, as program manager, has to pay attention to in relation to the clients and the families is equalled by nurturing and fostering the Care Hub consortia. So, and working with the partners. So there has been some tricky times. These partners sometimes come from different models of care and different models of support. They sometimes have different underlying philosophies. So bringing people together to actually work jointly has been challenging and has required a lot of effort. And I don't know, Jo, if maybe you want to speak. I don't think we're talking out of turn to talk about how that's played out in terms of our therapeutic specialists versus Berry Street and what's needed to happen to get everyone on the same page in that respect.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things there. There was that we have Berry Street with the trauma-informed therapeutic specialists, and we have the Anglicare family therapists and child therapists. And there was a real intentional piece of work at the start around how we do work together. And that was a bit bumpy at times. I think the Berry Street Take Two therapeutic specialists had worked in a longer term model, and Care Hub is very fast paced, and so it really took that work with Berry Street around what does this look like, what does this mean, and also how we bring this team together, because they were a team, and how we can put in some ways of working, but also there were some pretty difficult conversations, I guess, across the leadership at the start around what that could look like. But again, I guess there was that intentional openness, which we were really fortunate to have across the Care Hub consortia, to really work together and build together, and have those really at times difficult conversations, I guess, on how we do that. So,
and I think from the word go, there was a genuine kind of enthusiasm and energy around this is going to be something different. And for all of our practitioners whose juices get flowing by doing good work and creating change for families and young people, they're going, this is different, and we think we can get some better outcomes for these families and better outcomes for young people. So that's been the baseline that's been driving how people work together. This idea that actually, if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. Care Hub is different, and it's an opportunity for us to get a different result for these families.
Did Anglicare convene the meetings and workshops, or was that externally supported? You the convener? Were you the convener of the meetings and workshops, or was that externally supported?
The recent workshop I talked about was externally supported. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. That's almost the end. One last question. Is there any intent to undertake this model in other regions?
So this is a pilot. We think it's working really well. We think it's actually paying dividends in terms of families and children. We also think it's paying dividends for government by reversing that kind of churn through the system. So we're the first pilot. I would encourage you all, every chance you get, when you're talking to your stakeholders, to say, how great is Care Hub, and we need one in our region, because that's where it's going to land. It costs a few dollars to run this, but it's much cheaper than having kids languishing in resi care. It's much cheaper than trying to invest in a sister foster care, an old foster care system where it's just really hard to get foster carers. I mean, and it's much cheaper than having families go from crisis to crisis to crisis.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah, we might leave it on that profound comment, because I would imagine every single one of us would agree. Thank you so much, Michael and Jo. That was fascinating and just thought-provoking and challenging in terms of, oh my God, why can't this be just the norm? Really. Okay, we're going to move on to our second presentation, the Improving Care Initiative, Lived Experience and Improvement Science in Residential Care. We have Alex Sutton, Improvement Project Lead, Community Services Quality and Safety Office in DFFH. Alex has been supporting the delivery of the Improving Care Initiative, a project to improve the outcomes and experiences of children and young people in residential care through the use of improvement science. The initiative has been supported by lived experience consultants who have worked as part of the core team delivering the work. We also have Tash Anderson. Tash is quite well known, so welcome, Tash. She's a passionate lived experience advocate for children and young people who have experienced family violence and have been through the out-of-home care system. And Dylan Langley, also very well known, good on you, Improvement Project Officer with Alex's team at DFFH. Dylan recently commenced with the Community Services Quality and Safety Office following 2 years working as a lived experience consultant on the Improving Care Initiative. Beyond his work at the department, Dylan is a consultant, speaker and an educator who is passionate about seeing young people reach their full potential in life. Since the age of 16, he's been an advocate for social change, building capacity from a place of lived experience. Welcome all. Can you please share your your slides?
Cool. Thank you for that, Mandy. Special thank you to Mandy and the Centre for having us here to present today. It really is a privilege to be able to speak with you all today and share about some of the work that we've been working on. So as you heard, my name's Dylan, and we want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet. I'm on Wurundjeri country today, and I pay respects to elders past, present. And we also want to acknowledge the contribution of the First Nations people to the Improving Care Initiative and any Aboriginal people with us today. Before we commence any of our meetings, the Improving Care Initiative has made a really conscious decision to create a safe space. And this was designed with young people, but I will pass over to Tash, who will run us through this.
Thanks, Dylan. So this is the safe space agreement that was actually made on the first workshop with the children and young people who have been engaged sort of at points all throughout sort of the journey of this initiative. And this is stuff that it isn't just for children and young people, it's for anybody who comes into any space with where we're doing this work. So we have no negativity towards others, honesty and openness, allow time when needed. Sorry, Dylan, your face is in the way. Got it. Okay. So listen, no judgment, no pressure or expectations, respect, no acronyms. So making sure that we're very clear about if we're using an acronym, you know, we explain what that's about. Supporting each other, we're going to assume positive intent, no discrimination or isms, leave your all at the door, and we're all equal, and be mindful of others' experiences. I think I may have said that already. So yeah, like this is what came out of that workshop, but it's also something that we use in every session that we engage with. So whether they're young people or people who are working alongside young people or any sort of professional, the idea is that these are the values that we want to hold in the spaces that we go into. And this is also something that's important even in this space. So yeah, I'll pass on to Alex.
Thanks, Tash, and thanks, Dylan. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex, and thanks to Mandy for the introduction. I don't need to repeat myself. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're coming to this meeting from. I'm on Bunurong country in the west of Melbourne, and I want to pay my respects to elders past and present. So I'll do some additional introductions to what Mandy added. Just really want to acknowledge Dylan and Tash and their significant contribution to this project as lived experience consultants, and Dylan more recently in joining us at the department. That no acronyms thing from the previous slide is never more important than when you have someone new start an organisation like the department who has way too many acronyms, and a lot of them don't make any sense, and some of them sometimes sound a little inappropriate. So we will try and avoid them today. Although they're not all with us today, I do want to acknowledge the other lived experience consultants who have really been an important part of this work. So we've got Annika McCaffrey, who's another member of our core team and supports us in delivering this work. Hayley Prasad, who sits on our steering committee as a lived experience consultant and representative in the governance of this work, as well as there's a group of about 6 to 8 lived experience consultants who have supported us in participating in workshops and facilitating those workshops throughout the initiative. So it's really great for us to be here and just I hope that you take something away from this and learn something new. So to start with, I want to give a really quick overview to kind of provide a bit of context as to what the Improving Care Initiative is. So we had 12 improvement teams from across different organisations. Those improvement teams are ones that were in residential care houses. And those teams were using this tool called the Model for Improvement, which we're going to go through with you today. And all of that was with the aim to improve the outcomes and experiences of children and young people in residential care. So we're going to talk very, very briefly about the model for improvement. So the model for improvement, as the slide kind of outlines, is a simple yet powerful tool for accelerating improvement and making change. And the model asks 3 questions, which is really, what are we trying to achieve? How will we know the change that we're making is actually leading to improvement? And what changes can we make that will result in improvement? And then once you've answered those 3 questions, you then use the plan, do, study, act cycle, which isn't necessarily unique to the model for improvement, but it's pretty common. But you use that to actually implement and test and iterate on those changes that you think will help you achieve those aims. Also learning from your data as to whether or not you're achieving those aims. So you're probably looking at that and thinking, Improving Care Initiative and lived experience, where's the lived experience bit in that little image of the model for improvement? And what we're going to do is we're actually going to walk through and answer those 3 questions, as well as talk to the plan, do, study, act cycle, and show how we've worked to embed lived experience throughout the whole implementation or throughout the whole initiative. And so I'm going to pass over to Dylan to take us through those questions and give some context as to how we've embedded lived experience. So Dylan, over to you.
Cool, thanks for that, Alex. Yeah, we'll start with some context. So as Alex mentioned in introductions, we've had lived experience engaged at a number of different levels, as you can see on the slide. How we've done that is we've had them involved from the very beginning at our foundational workshop. We've had them involved at the steering committee, which is Hayley. We've had young people's involvement and lived experience involvement throughout designing some of the workshops and delivering that, as well as a continuous participation within the core team. So at every level of this initiative, we've made sure that there's been lived experience spread out across this and helping us create and deliver this sort of work. As Alex mentioned before, the model for improvement had 3 key questions, and the PDSA cycle to help us test these ideas. We engage young people in each of these steps, asking the young people to answer each of the questions and be involved in the PDSA cycle. So the teams are currently working within the PDSA cycle, and they're constantly having young people's engagement or trying to engage young people throughout the change ideas. As showed earlier, young people were involved at a number of different aspects of the project. One that I mentioned was the workshop, and this is some of the work that came out of the workshop. So these topics were areas of focus that the young people came up with. We didn't go to them and design these and go, hey, what do you think of this? They actually came up with these themselves throughout the conversations. And it's the sort of principles that we've used across the whole initiative, coming back to this, making sure that all the change ideas fall within this. It was also tested with a group of workers at a secondary workshop. But it just goes to show some of the things that have been really important and what areas we are looking to create improvement. Cool. So to answer the first question, we work with young people to identify what matters to them, as the previous image showed. Young people had lots of things to share with us through working with them. Then we distilled it down to this purpose statement. So the purpose statement is something that is overarching and we're always able to come back to. And we've decided to share it on the screen. So we aim to improve residential care so that children and young people feel safe, have stability, and are connected to their culture and family, particularly Aboriginal children, and are provided with education and life skills to support their future aspirations. To achieve this, we will ensure that the voice of the children and young people are heard and acted on to improve these key areas: children and young people in family-centered placement, safe house environment, consistent and supportive health and social care, and individualized learning pathways. During the initiative, we focused on safe house environment and the child and young person in family-centered placement. I want to be clear that this is what young people told us. Again, we didn't go to them with the preconceived ideas. We went in there with some butcher's paper and a whiteboard and asked what was important to them. And we took it from there. So this has always been coming from that lens of what the young people saw as important. During these sessions, we also asked young people as well as workers to share with us what are the ideas that you have or that you think can help us achieve that aim. As you can see from the change ideas on the board, many of them are simple little day-to-day things, but for young people, these were the things that mattered and they thought would make a significant difference in their experience of residential care. Give you a moment just to have a look at those. So, as you can see here, it's those that have a direct experience who we asked what they thought would make a difference. That is the frontline workers and the young people. Although we did consult with others, the model for improvement emphasizes that it is about what happens in the real world and not the boardroom. And therefore, asking those in the real world really helps identify what changes we can make. The last question for the model for improvement is, how will we know that the changes are making a lead to improvement? To answer this question, we involved the lived experience consultants working on the project team to help us design some data collection approaches. This approach would help us ask questions of young people in the houses where changes were being tested to know if the changes being made were leading to improvement. Our data collection set was heavily focused on hearing directly from young people in the houses where we were testing those ideas. The questions focused on hearing directly from young people in the houses and their experience of what safety is in the home, their relationship and engagement with their workers. This didn't go as planned, as we will touch in learnings later on. With anything, there's always challenges, but we will come back to that very shortly. Finally, when it comes to teams testing change ideas and using the PDSA approach, lived experience consultants working on the project team played an important role in providing advice and support to the staff testing these ideas to ensure that these tests were appropriate for young people based on their experience. Through coaching with teams, we really encourage the engagement of young people living in the home to participate in these tests and collect from them what they thought did and didn't work well in the changes. Lastly, teams needed to act on what young people were telling them, taking into account their thoughts and feedback. So I'll give it back to Alex now, and he can talk a bit about how did we achieve this.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. So what did we achieve? We achieved finding some really good gifts. That's number one learning from this work, is that this is my favorite. I think I use it in almost every presentation because I just absolutely, I like dogs. Yeah, I want to touch a little bit on our data and what we achieved. Don't want to go into a huge amount of detail because really the focus is about on how we engaged young people and lived experience consultants in this work. But some of our data, you can see here, this is just two of our quantitative data points that we had. So On the right, we've got SIMS incidents, and for teams participating in this work, what we saw was a decrease in SIMS incidents over the kind of 12 months that we measured for, and that's compared to the rest of the West Division, where this work was happening, where the number of incidents stayed the same or went up. And I said SIMS, and it's an acronym, and it means Client Incident Management System, for those who don't know. So it's where we record our critical incidents. So for the teams participating in this work, we saw a decline. Although we can't necessarily attribute any of the change ideas specifically to seeing this decline in results, what we do is we've looked at the graph on the left and similar ones to it, where this is actually where we were asking young people about their experience of care on those particular weeks or fortnights, however frequently it was asked. And in this one, you can see that to begin with, on the left-hand side, we've got this squiggly line that goes all over the place. But after a few months of the initiative, we actually saw that 100% of young people who were responding to this survey were feeling that their workers understood them. And we saw very, very similar results for being able to go to workers for help, and some of our other survey questions that we had for young people. And it's those things about building the stronger relationships between workers and young people, and empowering young people's voices through some of those simple change ideas that has allowed what we think to see that shift in critical incidents, and also improvements for young people. But what was really, I guess, more insightful is some of our qualitative data, and that's really come from having conversations with the improvement teams and what they found from being involved in this work. So talking to us about how some of the change ideas focused on family contact has allowed for reunification, or for contact with family that might not have happened for a long time. And we didn't have a measure that told us whether or not reunification was or wasn't happening for young people. Obviously, you saw the reduction in incidents, but to add to that, it was the behavioural presentation of the young people beyond just the count of incidents that we saw shift, and then just greater engagement of young people in the activities of the house, and one of those things being handover. The other big outcomes has really been around how staff who work in Resi Care have been able to actually take this methodology and test those ideas that they've had, or the things that young people are presenting to them, and saying, well, we now have got a tool to be able to test and enact change within the house. We're not reliant on someone telling us what we need to do. We've got a tool in which we can do that and demonstrate whether or not these changes and these ideas are making a difference. So it's been a really a powerful tool to support staff make a difference with the young people they're supporting. But as with all kind of initiatives and innovative work, there is a lot of challenges that come with this, and a lot of things that we've learned. So the Institute for Healthcare Improvement is who we partnered with as part of this work, and they're experts in the model for improvement. And this was some of the learnings that came out of the work that they had that they did to kind of evaluate the project, and that really lived experience was so critical to the success of this work. Without kind of their input, not only in the project teams, but the young people in the houses providing their feedback. That's really what we're needing to see the outcomes. One of the learnings, as Dylan touched on before, when it came to data collection, is really that we need to really be working on and improving the way that we actually hear the voices of young people in creative and tailored approaches that allow us to know if the changes that we're making are actually resulting in improvement. And that's not just specific for the use of the model for improvement, but for whenever we introduce any new thing into Resi Care or into any of our family and children's services, in that we've got to actually know from the young people who are experiencing these changes, is it actually making a difference to them? So there's still a lot of work for us to do. The cultural change that has come about, how workers think about how young people can actually contribute and participate in the house, and it's been really, really great to see. And the big learning is this is new, where you know, the whole point of this session is about innovation, and with innovation is about learning together and really identifying and overcoming the challenges that we face. And as the model for improvement tells us, that's really an important part of it. So what's next for us is we're continuing to support improvement teams who've got that capacity to still participate. And so we're really great to be working with a number of continuing improvement teams, but also seen some expansion of others where they've taken it from just one of the houses in their organisation to all 5 of the houses in their organisation within that division working to participate. And that's where they've really seen the value in the methodology. We've been working to apply the learnings from the initiative so far, so really looking at how do we structure our teams for better engagement, how do we improve our data collection approaches, especially with young people, and yeah, working really to refine the ways we hear from young people. We obviously have our cohort of lived experience consultants who give us really great and valuable insights into the design and delivery, but there's still that end point of actually knowing if the changes are making a difference. We're really fortunate to be working with the Centre for Excellence to look at evaluating the work so far, as well as support us in developing some tools and resources for the sector, yeah, to be able to continue this work and support the sector. And as every project looks for is money, we want the dollars. So thank you very much for having us all, and really encourage you, if you have any questions, especially for Tash and Dylan as lived experience consultants who have really supported this work. And I'm pretty sure, I'm sorry to call you out, but I'm pretty sure I saw Michelle Kirkpatrick, who's actually one of the members of one of our improvement teams, also here. So if you have any questions from an improvement team perspective, I'm sure Michelle would happily answer any questions as well. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Alex, Tash and Dylan. That was really interesting. I mean, such an interesting model, tackling some really challenging issues in a really different, innovative way, from a variety of perspectives, really. We have people commenting on that through the chat. What great results, lived experience consulting just won science as far as I'm concerned. Well done for making real changes fast. A few questions. What would you say, like the model has a variety of really innovative dimensions. I suppose, what would you say were some of the key ingredients for this work that you think were critical to its success and potential success going forward? And what have you learned? What would be the takeaways that you'd like the audience to know that you've learned or you do differently moving forward? Because as you say, you do something new and there's usually a big bucket of learnings that other people would probably also really get a value out of.
Yeah, sure. Dylan or Tash, feel free to jump in, but I might start going. Obviously, as I mentioned, critical to the success of this work was embedding lived experience from the beginning. We did not do any design work on what the changes would be, what the aim would be, any of that. Dylan, Tash, and Madeline, another lived experience consultant who was with us at the very beginning, like we had them on board before we had kind of really settled who from the partner organizations would be working with us, because we wanted to make sure that from the get-go, lived experience was really driving this work and was central to this work. And big credit to my previous colleague, Linda Harrison, for really flying the flag and making sure that happened. Because it allowed us to really critically think about how we did what we did, and that we were doing it for the right reasons, and we're focusing on the right things and things that mattered to young people. And I think that's really clearly demonstrated in, you look at the change ideas, they're not, they're small, simple, achievable things that actually matter to young people. They're not a big particular intervention approach, and that those things are really, really important. But for young people, it's still some of those really simple day-to-day things that made a difference. And we might have gone the completely opposite end of the spectrum and looked at how can we improve the implementation of particular methodologies, rather than actually going, well, what actually matters to young people? And it's those little day-to-day things about being heard and participating that really came to the front through that. In terms of key takeaways, I think with all of this innovation work and with all of that planning, we were still very naive. You know, we still didn't know we didn't know everything, and we still don't know everything. And so we didn't things around who should be in improvement teams was a big learning post the initiative, is that just getting the right people involved in the work was a big thing, and that was naivety on our part around the sector and who was best placed to be supporting that work. And I think that one of the things that the Institute for Healthcare Improvement talk about a lot is that with this type of work and with a lot of innovative work, failing forward is a really common thing that they talk about, is that, you know, failing is okay because it teaches you something and you keep moving forward. And there was a lot of failings and a lot of forwards, and sometimes some backwards, but you know, overall we really felt like we were able to I think we're really starting to see glimpses of improvement across this stuff. The other big reflection would be, don't try to do innovative work during COVID as people are trying to learn how to use technology and all those kind of things. Maybe avoid global pandemics at all costs. So I don't know, Dylan and Tash, if you want to add any other reflections from your experiences around, you know, the good and the bad of the work so far.
Well, I think for me, especially the foundational workshops were really, really important, because that really set the sort of the scene and the atmosphere for the work to come. And particularly for the young people, I think it really showed that bringing them in from the beginning meant that there was, you know, a possibility that this would actually lead to something, instead of being brought in towards like the end of something being created, then going, what do you think? So I think that like that, and like the fact that like their perspectives and their experiences really drove sort of the topics was really, really important to the work that we did. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably just second what's already been said in terms of like having that lived experience voice and the young people's voice. Early on, throughout the foundational workshops, but even along the way, whenever something wasn't going right or we were still learning and testing ideas, it always came back to that lived experience and how was that going to be incorporated? How did that feel for them before we could move forward? So I think that was probably our biggest advantage and positive to look through it, was just continuously having that involvement and not going anywhere until we really concrete that. And in terms of the learning aspect, yeah, Alex touched on it. Like there were a lot of little hiccups and some big ones such as COVID, but the big thing, like I think the most important thing from the learning aspect was creating that space for teams to get together at these workshops, share those ideas, but also seeing how young people are engaging within the houses, and also testing with lived experience in that aspect as well. So just creating that space for that connection and that connection to community was really important for everybody, I think. And obviously COVID did not want to play a part in allowing that.
Yeah. That was a great presentation, guys. Really interesting, really thought-provoking. We'll move on just in the interest of time, but thank you so much for sharing your experience and being, you know, honest, not honest, but reflecting on your learnings as well, because that's probably where the little kernels of transferable knowledge come from often, isn't it? It's when things haven't quite worked out the way we thought they might. We might now go on to our third presenter. This session is titled Empathy and Action Learning from Care Leavers. And this is a bit of a different angle and spin, which I'm sure you'll be fascinated with. Reggie Tang is our speaker. He's an expert consultant at the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare. And Reggie is a young non-binary person from Melbourne who spent time growing up in foster care. Reggie currently works at the centre as a youth support facilitator. They work with a team of policymakers and contribute their lived experience of the out-of-home care sector to provide advice to policy and projects. Reggie is a staunch advocate for improving the out-of-home care sector for young people and supporting young people with a disability, mental health challenges, and advocating for LGBTQIA+ rights. We were going to have a second speaker, but they've had to withdraw. So more power to Reggie stepping up and doing it on your own. So thank you very much for that, Reggie. If you'd like to turn your slides on, can't wait to hear what you've got to say.
Hello. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here. This workshop was developed by Rosie, Maggie House, Kiara Satut, and myself. Originally, with this conference, this little symposium, we were planning on having Rosie to be here, but she has had to pull out because of mental health concerns. So I totally understand and empathize, as is in the name. So yeah, welcome to Empathy in Action, Learning from Care Leavers. Let's do this. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands, the Centre for Excellence. Give me a second. My notes aren't appearing. Give me one moment. Sorry about this. Just having some tech issues. Sorry, give me one moment.
All good, Reggie. Just take your time. This is what happens sometimes with tech. Let's face it, we've all been there 100 times. I'm not at home right now. Full capability of my 3 monitors and all that plugged in. So there we go. And I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay, this should work now. Okay. So I'd like to acknowledge the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare. I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to all past, present, and emerging traditional custodians and elders of the country on which we work. Also like to acknowledge that I'm currently on the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the Wadawurrung lands, where Deakin University in Geelong currently meets. I'm here for a student political conference, which is why I'm not at home, but I'd like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Team. So Rosie, who was supposed to be here, basically, Rosie has a lived experience of out-of-home care. She has done a lot of advocacy around, especially for providing the Empathy in Action project. She's done a lot of things around providing advice on how we can contribute to our workshop. One of the key things Rosie has provided on has been around the the case studies, providing lived experience on them, which has been very helpful. But sadly, Rosie couldn't be here today, so I'll be presenting this workshop. My name is Reggie. I am a queer, non-binary person of color, and I'm disabled, so have a lot of intersectionality in my life, which is very relevant in the things that I do. Yeah. The what and why. So what is Empathy in Action training and a brief overview? So Rosie sent me some notes. So I'm just going to read you her notes that she wrote down. Empathy in Action, learning from care leavers is delivered by lived experience consultants, lived experience experts. This training was developed to help workers better understand care leavers' experience and what skills and attributes care leavers are looking for in a worker in service. And Rosie's response to why was it necessary to develop the training? Why is it important to hear youth voice and lived experience? Rosie says, I believe that it was necessary to develop this training as young people should be the center of our work, that young people are affected by our decisions, and that young people are the future. For Rosie personally, I share my experience as I believe change is needed, but also to empower and motivate other young people and to remind them that they are not alone.
my response to why we decided to target allied health services rather than care services. When we were originally developing Empathy in Action, we wanted to provide this kind of workshop experience to people who don't normally work within the confines of the of out-of-home care, so not residential care workers. We wanted to target there's this imagine an onion. So this is a Shrek meme, I just realized, but imagine an onion where there's multiple layers, and each layer is a part of a young person's life, a trauma that they've experienced, and that all makes up one onion, who they are. We wanted to also target the people in these layers, the people that don't normally, I guess, have much to do with the residential care or out-of-home care work. So we were initially looking at targeting footy coaches, club leaders, a lot of different people like psychologists and that kind of stuff, maybe school teachers, school counselors, people like that. We wanted to target these people, these allied services, because they were people that supported young people in the work that they do in their everyday life, that was not relating to their care experience, as a lot of young people may have, is that community is very important to them, and community is very important to me. That's how I actually, got past my own traumas of out-of-home care and all that kind of stuff. So community may be very important to young people, and we wanted to recognize that and give the community a chance to actually understand the out-of-home care sector, and I guess the traumas, and especially around leaving care. I'm sure there are students or young people who have recently left care that may not have the support they have, and it'd be great if say for example their local footy coach had experience in the out-of-home care, and he can actually advocate for them, which is very powerful, because we all know the community groups are very strong. They're like families, so in that regard, I find that if they can support a young person throughout that'd be very powerful. Some key learnings. Coordinating young people. Some key learnings coordinating young people. So what I learned as the project lead for Empathy in Action was that the coordination of young people, and especially around the key ideas of youth participation, was very, very difficult. When I first started this project with Emily Mellon, and I think it was 4 or 5 young people who wrote the grant application, or helped write the grant application and formalize the idea of Empathy in Action, they all left. They didn't have capacity to help out on the project anymore. And I was kind of left to run the show with Emily. And Emily, my manager, she's a very amazing person. She was we were discussing on what to do and how to get there, and basically I needed to recruit more young people into the project. So I put out social media, but also emails to the YPPN network about recruiting young people with a care leaver experience who have recently left out-of-home care, to actually work on this project together. And the best thing about it is I got a lot of response from people, and process of actually recruiting them was pretty streamlined. I just set, I had several people call me. I had a police sergeant or some high-ranked police officer call me, and I was like, what have I done? Am I in trouble? But in that regard, the police officer just saw my letter in the YPPN network and suggested that I should basically recruit Maggie, who was having some issues at the time and wanted to seek out leadership opportunities. So I gave her a go, and it's been pretty good. But I guess the whole problem we had initially was when we had 6 young people join us. By towards midway through 2021, we only had 3 young people. So a lot of young people dropped out during the project. And they dropped out for a variety of reasons. Some of them I couldn't get in contact with anymore. Some of them they just said they didn't have capacity or time. They were busy with uni or whatnot. So that's understandable. Yeah, so that also talks about the onboarding of young people. When I onboarded the young people into the project, I made it very clear to Emily that the young people that I recruit to the Empathy and Action project will be remunerated well. That was the key to our criteria, was that they will be remunerated well, and they'll be remunerated based on the SHADS award. Because as a young person who has gone through working for the Create Foundation, working for DFFH or DHHS when I was there, they will often pay you in gift cards, and I just felt that was like a hit to the face. Like, you're asking for our advice and our lived experience, and you're paying us in gift cards. Like, this is not on. I'm not going to appropriate that. So I took on the key life experience that I had with those organizations, and I kind of formalized it to Emily that when we recruit young people, we need to onboard them as center employees and give them the same rights, as well as utilizing the same services as center employees, and paying them the correct award rate, because that's very important to me, and very important to young people. Like, what is a young person going to do with a gift card? They can't pay their rent, they can't pay their bills with that, So in my opinion, developing that kind of onboarding process had to be thought. And we were also rushed because in the process of developing the training, we were developing it in lockdown in 2020, 2021, and it was just insane. We didn't actually meet face to face at all. Not until very much the last week before the first presentation, we met face to face, but we were in constant revolving lockdowns, and we just couldn't justify bringing people in because of the concern of COVID. And some young people in the project didn't want to come in because they were scared about getting sick. So that's so understandable, because you have to catch public transport to get into the city, and just it's a bit complicated. But yeah, it was run during lockdown, and we didn't have the capacity to actually get everyone together during that time. We did meet on Teams, Microsoft Teams a lot, and utilizing that. And it was pretty hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was very, very difficult to develop the project and the training all online, but we did it, and we did it well. And just to summarize the key learnings, basically, youth participation is hard. I'm sure everyone who works with young people knows that very well. But as a person who didn't come from a project management experience, who had to take on this lead as a project management role, I learned a lot from that process as well. Working with young people is difficult because a lot of young people have competing priorities with work and other uni commitments. So it's very difficult to actually work together when people have multiple layers of things they're working on and things they're not working on. And then we also have to question whether it is running these workshops actually considered work. They're getting paid for their time to be here, but they're not getting paid for their time to check their emails. So during the project, we also tried to utilize basically the idea of paying young people 3 hours a month to check their emails, and we didn't get too far with that, but that was an idea we had. Moving on, advice for utilizing the power of lived experience. I just provided that earlier. And future thinking for this project. We were actually thinking of developing potentially an e-learning module for Empathy in Action. Empathy in Action has been really successful so far, and we've actually thought about how well it's run and the amount of positive feedback we got from this project, which is really good. We were thinking of basically recording, getting a video done for the young people previously registered with this project, like Maggie and Kiara, getting their lived experience stories and kind of composing it into a video that we can bring along to our Empathy in Action workshops. And the e-learning stuff side of things was kind of my idea, because I love, e-learning modules. I love teaching people on online screen, where you produce everything all at once, and then they just have to get it, just watch it whenever they need to, which is really powerful. I think, it provides the legacy and longevity of the project in itself, but that's something that we'll do in the long-term side of things. Yeah. Let's move on. So the feedback we've received from participants. So in the slide, you'll see some positive feedback. So I'll just read them out to you. Excellent reflective questions for discussion and teamwork between Rosie and Reggie. Great balance between stories, statistics, and personal experience. Only positive feedback. The next one was, it's tough to get participation on Zoom, but I think they did an excellent job. The whole workshop was interesting, varied, and interactive. A heartfelt thank you. Thank you so much, Reggie and Rosie, for your expertise and generosity. I learned the importance of connecting with and being present with young people as they leave care. And it was a great investment of my time and definitely worth every second. I must say, one of the feedbacks provided was about a group, like 2 people from the UK. When we presented our session, it was around I believe it was around 4 to 6 p.m. And in UK time, it was I can't remember what it was, but it was very early in the morning. And these 2 participants came and they were from the UK, from an organization, and I was very impressed. But they said that it was basically worth waking up for so early. So I was very heartfelt for me personally. I was like, yes, this is lovely to hear. So far, we've only had positive feedback, which is really good, and some constructive feedback as well. We have a video run in the actual presentation, and it's a video created by Create Foundation, and it's a bit the way the video is made. It's very it has some audio mixing issues, and we've had some feedback about that, and we're I can't do anything about that. But there's things like that we can improve on, and we'll take it on board. Yeah, so I was going to do a breakout rooms for this session, but I'm not going to because there's 40 people in the room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to share a link in the chat, the Zoom chat. It's a case study for Hunter. This is just a taster of what you'll do if you come to the Empathy in Action workshop. I'm just trying to find it now. Where is it? Oh, here it is. So it's a PDF document. I'll attach it to the chat now. You should, what is happening? Give me a second. If I do everyone and I do share item, share your computer. I just want you to spend probably 5 minutes, or probably 4 to 5 minutes looking at this this case study, and we'll come back in. I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm putting a timer on right now, and have a read of the case study and come back when we discuss the questions.
We haven't got it yet, Reggie. Chat.
Oh wait, I sent it to one person. Whoops, my bad. Sorry. Just realized it was sent to Jade. Let me just fix that again.
Just at this point, I'll just hoping that people can stay for this, what's going to be a really interesting little insight, but wanted to just jump in and thank people for the great session. And if you do have to leave, just so that I've said that. But yeah.
Yep, so I've just shared the case study to everyone. Please thumbs up if you've received it, or just let me know. Thank you very much. I'll give you about 5 minutes to read it. It's 1:58 now, so 2:02, 2:03, we'll do it. We'll discuss this case study. All right. Cool. So I'm going to ask some of you to, when we ask these questions, to turn on your microphone and answer this. So we'll go through the first question, which was, Hunter feels like his mental health goes through episodes that degrade his mental acuity. What services can Hunter access, and how should Hunter proceed? Has anyone read this?
Given there's a lot of people online and people might not be feeling that brave to speak up, but you could put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in.
But this does give you a sense, particularly as Reggie was saying before, when you have those sort of allied workers or workers that are sort of sit outside the ring of young care leavers' usual, kind of care team, I suppose. It's quite interesting for those workers to start to explore these ideas about, how would I provide that advice? How would I provide, how would I support this young person? Reggie and the team have delivered this training for Origin, the Youth Mental Health Service, and also youth services students. So you've kind of got a real breadth of people that are exploring these case studies and getting them to think about, how they can best support within their realm of work and their expertise, how they best support care leavers.
Yeah, so a lot of the stories, the case studies that we provide, especially Hunter. Hunter's story has a lot of it's fiction. It's based off fiction, but a lot of the trivialities and that Hunter goes through is related to some of the struggles that the young people involved in the project have gone through. So whilst the story is fiction, a lot of the key elements of the story are based on true lived experiences. And you will learn that if you ever have the chance to come to our Empathy and Action workshop. We have 3 case studies, and they're pretty in detail and the questions can go into detail. So we'll just continue. I think that's the conclusion of my part of the talking about this. We'll just go into Q&A now. I'll just stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Reggie. I mean, it's really thought-provoking when you see it laid out like that, because my immediate responses would be the stock standard Beyond Blue or Headspace or whatever. And you could almost anticipate that they wouldn't necessarily have the types of insights, specifically the multiplicity of experiences that an out-of-home care leaver might experience. So I think that was a really powerful illustration, actually. I'm really interested in how, at this point, how many workshops have you done, and is there an intention? You'd sort of mentioned perhaps doing something online, which I could see is hugely valuable. Is there intention going forward to expand out?
So we've run about, so it was 3 or 4 this year. I think it was 3 this year, and last year we did about 2 or 3 as well. So around 5 to 6 workshops we've done so far in the span of 2 years. Originally, this project was funded by, thankfully, from the Foundation of Young Australians and a grant from DFFH, I think. But basically, we've run these workshops over the past 2 years, and it has all of the workshops we've run so far have been online, simply because online makes it easier. At home, I've got a full desk set up to do all the presentations and all kind of stuff, have music playing in the background, which is really good. But yeah, we weren't intended to potentially run the workshops maybe in several areas around Melbourne, around Victoria, rural Victoria even. But given the lockdown, we kind of didn't do that because of online. It makes it easier for people to access, just over the internet. Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned before and sort of pointed to some of these things, some of the considerations that organisations should examine if they're thinking about engaging lived experience consultants or setting up lived experience consultant groups. And I just wondered if you could elaborate from your experience in this project, but I also know you've been doing this work sort of more extensively, what overall, as a takeaway for people who are here, if you're interested in exploring, what would be like the top 3 or 4 things that you think would be, a really good starting place?
Yeah, so I think if you're working with young people with a lived experience, young people with lived experience often may have traumas revolving around their lived experience or their in this case, out-of-home care experience. So if you're a practitioner or a facilitator in developing a kind of project for young people who have a lived experience, my top recommendation would probably be to recruit like a youth peer support worker or someone who is involved with the mental health aspect of the side of things to actually oversee and help facilitate the discussions in the meetings, because often traumatic experiences may come up during discussion. And whilst, you know, I am trained in mental health first aid and also in as a youth worker, you're never truly prepared for it. You know, some of the questions that may be asked or some of the topics may be discussed. So if you are potentially recruiting or, you know, working with young people with a lived experience, seeking out a mental health support worker or a peer support worker with a lived experience may help in facilitating discussions in a safe manner. And I guess the other one, like you said, top 3. So on the top of my head, that was number 1. Number 2 would probably be like remunerate young people well. Like I said again, don't just provide gift cards. Gift cards don't pay rent, they do not pay bills. If you want to work with young people and value their lived experience, pay them well, you know, pay them based on a shared reward rate, you know. That's probably my second recommendation. And third recommendation is to, I haven't thought about this too hard, but understand youth participation. Yeah, understand that young people may not always have your priorities in mind, and understand that they have conflicting priorities in their own life. You know, young people often, you know, like mental health is an aspect of it, you know, going to uni, going to school, doing work, you know. I guess it's hard to it's something you have to sit down with young people to actually talk about and understand, because sometimes, you know, when I consider this type of work where I'm like presenting an open symposium, I can understand that, you know, if you're sick, like, you know, let me know, you know, kind of stuff, which is really positive. You know, people do that. And yeah, it's just understanding that not everything's going to work to plan, and that you all have like setbacks sometimes, but you just got to pick it up the pieces and just do it. Yeah.
That's really, really good insight, Reggie. If we've just got time for one more question, if anyone wanted to step forward.
I've got less of a question, more of a comment. That I think it's a really, really great approach, considering it reminds me of the design of the NDIS and how a big focus of their thing was about empowering, I guess, what they call mainstream services to be able to respond to the needs of people with disabilities. And it sounds like what you're doing is really taking that approach with mainstream services to understand the complexity of needs for people who are leaving care and might need that support, because those are the services that will be having those interactions with people. So it's a really, really great piece of work, Reggie.
Thank you very much, Alex.
We might wind it up there. I'd second that, and I think everyone who has taken this journey, looking at your case study and so forth, would recognise the potential transferability of this across a whole heap of different aspects of our life that young care leavers have to navigate as well. So really great, really innovative. Thank you so much, Reggie, and all our presenters today. It's sort of given tingles a bit in terms of what can be done with a bit of fearlessness and a bit of innovation, and listening to the actual people that are most affected, the young people themselves. Alex's suggested improvements, as you said, weren't the earth-shattering thing a public servant or a service provider would want, but are more meaningful because they're actually the thing that makes a difference for the young person. So there's pretty common messages through all of this. Thank you very much. Really appreciate everyone who keeps coming to open forums, keeps sharing their experiences. We've had a great program. Looking forward to another great program next year. So I'd put out a call if anyone is interested in profiling their program or another innovative program that they know, to reach out to us and give us that information, and we might be able to do something around that. Wonderful. We have a wonderful job doing this type of stuff, and wishing you a really happy festive season, great time off, lots of enjoyable time with family and friends, and keep safe. And enjoy. We deserve it.